The Tycoon's son could never walk, until the black cleaning woman changed everything. Richard Thompson was desperate. For 3 years he had been trying to find a cure for his son Peter's paralysis, spending fortunes on the best specialists in the country and abroad. The 7-year-old boy hadn't moved his leg since he was 4, and no doctor could explain why. It was on that rainy Monday in March when Faith arrived at the mansion in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. The 45-year-old black woman carried only a small suitcase and a timid smile when Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper, greeted her at the back entrance. "Are you the new cleaner?" asked Mrs. Jenkins, eyeing Faith from head to toe. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Faith Johnson. I came about the job posted in the paper." "Well, you seem experienced. The boss is very particular about cleanliness, especially in young Peter's room. He has special needs and requires a spotless environment." Faith nodded. It wasn't her first time working in wealthy homes, but something about this mansion gave her an odd feeling. Maybe it was the heavy silence lingering in the halls, or the coldness of the expensive furniture decorating the rooms. "Mr. Richard is away on business today, so you can start without worry. But tomorrow he'll be here, and he won't tolerate noise or distractions during work hours." Mrs. Jenkins led Faith through the main rooms of the mansion. Each space was decorated with antique furniture and artwork worth more than Faith would earn in years of work. But what stood out most was the complete absence of family photos. In such a large house, clearly home to a family, there wasn't a single picture of the boss's wife or son. "And the lady of the house?" Faith asked, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Jenkins's face immediately closed off. "There hasn't been a lady in this house for 3 years, and the boss doesn't like the subject brought up. You'd do well to remember that." The housekeeper's tone made it clear this was forbidden territory. Faith tucked the information away, but her professional curiosity had been piqued. In her years studying psychology, she'd learned that family silences often held the deepest pain. "Now I'll show you Peter's room. It's where you'll spend most of your time." They climbed the marble stairs to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, even in daylight. Mrs. Jenkins stopped in front of a solid wood door and knocked lightly. "Peter, dear, may I come in? There's someone here to meet you." No answer. Mrs. Jenkins sighed and opened the door anyway. The room was enormous, with large windows overlooking the garden. But despite the natural light, there was something gloomy about the space. In the center stood a wheelchair, and in it, a fair-haired boy with light hair, wearing a gray shirt and beige pants. His blue eyes were fixed on the window as if watching something far away. "Peter, this is Faith. She'll help keep your room clean." The boy didn't turn his head. He showed no reaction to the women's presence. Faith felt a pang in her chest. She recognized that distant gaze, that disconnect from the world around him. This child wasn't just suffering from physical paralysis. "Is he always like this?" Faith whispered to the housekeeper. "Since the accident. He barely speaks, doesn't play, shows no interest in anything. The boss has brought in psychologists, therapists, childhood trauma specialists. Nothing works." "What kind of accident?" Mrs. Jenkins hesitated, glancing around as if someone might be listening. "The doctors found nothing physically wrong. They say it's psychological, but the boss won't accept it. He insists there must be some injury the tests can't detect." Faith approached the wheelchair. Peter kept staring out the window, but she noticed an almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders as she drew nearer. "Hi, Peter. My name is Faith, but my friends call me Faith. Can I call you Pete?" For the first time, the boy slightly turned his head. He didn't quite look at her, but it was a sign he'd heard her. "I'll be cleaning your room, but I promise not to touch your things without asking first. Is that okay?" Peter didn't answer, but Faith noticed his fingers twitching slightly on the side of the wheelchair. It was a tiny reaction, but meaningful for someone trained to observe behavior. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Mrs. Jenkins showed her where the cleaning supplies were and the boss's specifications for how the room should be kept. Everything had to be in perfect order, not a speck of dust, not a single item out of place. The level of demand was almost obsessive. The boss believes a clean and organized environment can help the boy recover. That's why he's so strict. Faith began working in silence, watching Peter from the corner of her eye. The boy remained still, but she noticed that every now and then his gaze followed her. When she finished cleaning one area and moved to another part of the room, his blue eyes discreetly tracked her. As she wiped down the furniture, Faith started humming a song her mother used to sing when she was little. It was a simple tune about a little bird flying freely through the fields, dreaming of finding its family. Flying through the blue sky, the little bird so small, searching for its home, for its nest. Something extraordinary happened. Peter turned his head fully toward her. His blue eyes were wide as if he'd seen a ghost. His hands gripping the wheelchair arms began to tremble visibly. "Pete." Faith stopped singing immediately. "Are you okay?" The boy opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came out. His hands kept shaking, and tears welled up in his eyes. It was the first strong emotional reaction he'd shown since she arrived. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Did the song remind you of something?" Peter nodded, still trembling. A tear rolled down his pale cheek. "Did someone sing that song to you?" Another nod, more intense this time. "Your mum used to sing it, didn't she?" The reaction was immediate. Peter began to cry silently, his small body shaking with stifled sobs. Faith dropped the cleaning cloth and knelt beside the wheelchair. Hey, it's okay to cry. Missing someone we love isn't wrong." She was leaving," were the first words Peter spoke between sobs. "Who was leaving, honey?" "Mom. She said she was leaving and never coming back. It was my fault." Faith felt a lump in her throat. She was beginning to understand the root of his unexplained paralysis. It wasn't a physical injury keeping Peter from walking. It was the weight of guilt and abandonment on his 7-year-old shoulders. "Why do you think it was your fault?" Peter wiped his face with his small hands. "I was fighting with Dad that day, yelling a lot. Mum got really sad and said she couldn't take it anymore, then she left and never came back. And you think if you hadn't fought, she would have stayed? I know she would. If I'd been a good boy, she wouldn't have left." The painful simplicity of a child's logic broke Faith's heart. Peter had built a story where he was the villain of his own life, the one responsible for his family's destruction. And as punishment for himself, he had unconsciously paralyzed his own legs. "Peter, can I tell you a secret?" The boy looked at her curiously. "Sometimes adults make difficult decisions for reasons children can't understand, but it's never, ever the child's fault when parents separate. But I was yelling. And do you think children can't yell when they're upset? Do you think that's so terrible?" Peter thought for a moment. "Daddy always gets really mad when I yell." "And how do you feel when you can't yell, when you can't show you're upset?" "Sad. Really sad." Faith nodded. "I imagine so. Everyone needs to be able to show their feelings, especially children." Just then, they heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. Mrs. Jenkins appeared in the doorway, looking worried. "Faith, the boss came back early from his trip. He's on his way up to see Peter." The effect was immediate. Peter stiffened in his chair again, his face closed off, and he went back to staring out the window as if nothing had happened. The transformation was so quick it was almost frightening. Firm footsteps approached down the hall. Richard Thompson appeared in the bedroom doorway. He was a tall man with a stern look, wearing an expensive suit despite having just returned from a trip. His dark eyes scanned the room before settling on Faith. "Who is this?" he asked Mrs. Jenkins as if Faith weren't even there. "The new cleaner, sir, Faith Johnson." Richard studied Faith in silence for a few seconds. She stood and bowed her head respectfully, but didn't seem intimidated. "I hope Mrs. Jenkins has made clear the cleaning standards I expect in this house." "Yes, sir. She made it very clear." "Good. Peter has special needs and requires an environment completely free of germs and bacteria. Any carelessness could lead to complications for his condition." Faith nodded, but part of her wondered if all this obsession with cleanliness was more about the father's control than the son's health. "How has he been today?" Richard asked Mrs. Jenkins, completely ignoring Peter, who remained in his chair like a piece of furniture. "Same as always, sir. Quiet. No trouble." "Good. Faith, when you're done here, you may leave. Peter needs rest," Faith finished putting away the cleaning supplies, but before leaving, she approached Peter's chair. "Bye, Pete. I'll be back tomorrow to continue our talk." Richard raised an eyebrow. "Talk? What does she mean by that?" "Nothing much, sir," Faith replied quickly. "I just chat with him a little while I clean, to be kind." "That's unnecessary. Peter isn't in a state to hold conversations. It's better to work in silence so as not to overstimulate him." Faith bit her tongue to keep from responding. She could clearly see Richard treated his own son like a terminal patient, not a child who needed affection and encouragement. But it was only her first day, and she needed to keep the job. "Yes, sir. Understood." She left the room, but before closing the door, she saw Peter glance quickly in her direction. It was a fleeting look, almost imperceptible, but full of pleading, as if he were begging her not to give up on him. Faith walked downstairs with a heavy heart. In the kitchen, she found Mrs. Jenkins preparing dinner. "Can I ask you something?" Faith said, checking that no one else was around. "Depends on the question. What really happened to Peter's mother?" Mrs. Jenkins stopped stirring the pot and looked around nervously. "I already told you the boss doesn't like this subject. But you saw the boy's reaction when I sang that song? He reacted for the first time. This can't just be a coincidence." The housekeeper took a deep breath. "Laura was a wonderful woman. She used to sing to Pete every night before he went to sleep. Always the same song you were singing." "And what happened between her and Richard?" "No one knows for sure. They fought a lot in the last few months before she left. Pete always witnessed the arguments, poor thing. Terrible screams echoed through the whole house." "And she just left one day?" "It was strange. One night there was a horrible fight, with shouting and things breaking. The next day she was gone, taking only a few clothes with her. She left everything behind, even her jewelry. And she never reached out again?" Mrs. Jenkins hesitated once more, as if torn between loyalty to her employer and some truth that troubled her. "The boss said she didn't want any contact with the family anymore, that she wanted to start a new life far from here." "But do you believe that?" I don't know. Laura loved Pete so much. It was hard to imagine her abandoning her own son like that without warning. Faith absorbed this information. Her professional experience told her there was much more to this story than what was being said, and Pete, at the center of it all, had found a way to punish himself for losing his mother. By becoming a child who could no longer walk, who could no longer be normal, as if it were his way of atoning for what he believed he had caused. That night, Faith went to her small boarding house in East Los Angeles with her mind racing. She had taken the cleaning job out of financial desperation. Her savings had been drained paying for her own son Jack's complicated surgery months earlier. But now, she saw that maybe she was there for a bigger reason. Her psychology degrees had been tucked away in a drawer for 2 years, ever since she lost her job at the public hospital due to budget cuts. Working as a cleaner was humiliating for someone with her qualifications, but bills didn't pay themselves. Jack needed regular medical follow-ups and she couldn't afford to be proud. But Pete was different. She saw in him a reflection of so many children she had treated during her years in practice. Children who developed physical symptoms in response to emotional trauma. And if she could help him, maybe she could feel like she had a professional purpose again, beyond just cleaning houses. The next morning, Faith arrived at the mansion determined. Mrs. Jenkins greeted her with the news that Richard had left early for meetings and wouldn't be back until late in the day. "That means you can work in Pete's room without pressure. He's more restless today. He barely slept last night." Faith climbed the stairs with renewed hope. She found Pete in his usual spot, staring out the window, but this time his eyelids were heavy, with dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning, Pete. Didn't sleep well?" Pete glanced at her briefly and nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I had nightmares." "What kind of nightmares?" Pete hesitated, nervously playing with the hem of his gray t-shirt. "I dreamed about that day. The day Mom left." "Do you want to tell me about that day?" "Dad was really angry. He yelled that Mom was irresponsible, that she didn't take good care of me. Mom was crying and said she felt trapped, that she couldn't stand living like a prisoner anymore." Faith began cleaning quietly, letting Pete speak at his own pace. "I started crying too because I didn't want them to fight. Then Dad got even angrier and said I was being manipulated by Mom, that she was teaching me to be weak. And what did you do? I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could for them to stop. Then Mom panicked and ran out of the room. I ran after her, but I tripped on the stairs and fell. Faith stopped cleaning. This was the first time Peter had mentioned a fall. Did you get hurt when you fell? I hit my head, but it wasn't serious. Mom picked me up and carried me to the room. She was crying a lot, saying that house was making us sick. And then? She put me in bed and sang that song to help me sleep. She said everything would be okay, that she'd find a solution. But when I woke up the next day, she was gone. Peter started crying again, but this time he could speak through his tears. I woke up and couldn't feel my legs. I thought it was because of the fall, but the doctors said nothing was broken. Dad was desperate, took me to several hospitals, but no one could explain it. And you, what did you think? I knew why. It was because I was a bad boy, because I made Mom leave. God was punishing me so I couldn't run after her again. The cruel logic of a child's mind revealed itself in all its painful simplicity. Peter had created a narrative where his paralysis was divine punishment for what he believed he had caused, and subconsciously, he maintained that paralysis as a form of permanent penance. Peter, can I tell you something about me? The boy wiped his nose on his shirt sleeve and nodded. I have a son your age. His name is Jack. And you know what he did when his father and I separated? Peter looked at her with interest. He got really mad at me. He yelled, broke some toys, said he hated me. You know what I did? What? I hugged him and told him I understood he was sad and angry, because it's normal for kids to feel that way when parents separate. But I made my mom leave. Peter, listen to me carefully. Your mom didn't leave because of you. Adults make complicated decisions for adult reasons, things kids can't understand or control. But if I hadn't yelled, she still would have left, because her decision wasn't about you yelling or not yelling. It was about the problems between her and your dad. Peter stayed silent for a long time, processing this information. Do you think she still thinks about me? I'm sure she does. Mothers don't stop loving their children even when they have to leave. At that moment, Faith made a risky decision. She stopped cleaning and sat on the floor at Peter's eye level. Pete, can I ask you something? What? Can you try moving your toes for me? I can't. I've tried millions of times. I know you have. But can you try once with me here? Peter looked at her suspiciously. Why? Because I want to show you something. Faith waited. Peter looked at his feet inside his small sneakers and closed his eyes, concentrating. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the big toe on his right foot moved. Peter opened his eyes immediately, startled. Did you see? I did. And you felt it, didn't you? I did. But how is that possible? The doctors said I couldn't move. The doctors were right and wrong at the same time. Physically, there's nothing wrong with your legs. But your mind created such a strong block that your body obeyed. Peter looked visibly confused. I don't understand. I'll explain it simply. Sometimes when something really sad happens, our bodies find a way to show that sadness. In your case, your legs stopped working because you feel guilty about your family's sadness. So I can walk again? Yes, you can. But first, you need to stop blaming yourself for what happened. Peter stayed quiet, absorbing this revelation. Faith could see the gears turning in his young mind, trying to process concepts too complex for his age. Faith, can you help me? Of course I can. But it needs to be our secret for now, because your father won't understand. Why not? Because he's too focused on finding something physically wrong with you. It'll be hard for him to accept that the problem lies in your feelings. Peter nodded gravely, as if he understood the complexity of the situation. It can be our secret. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Over the following weeks, Faith developed a careful routine. On mornings when Richard was away, She worked with Peter on exercises disguised as games. They started simple, asking him to imagine walking, visualizing his feet moving, recalling the sensation of running. Gradually, the movements became more frequent. First just his toes, then flexing his ankles, small twitches in his thigh muscles. Peter was literally relearning how to trust his own body. But physical progress was only half the battle. The real struggle was happening in that child's heart and mind. Faith needed to help him undo 3 years of self-imposed guilt. "Pete, today I'm going to teach you a different exercise." "What is it?" "I want you to tell me 5 good things you remember about your mom." Peter smiled for the first time since Faith had met him. She made the best chocolate cake in the world, taught me how to make paper airplanes, read me stories every night, danced with me in the living room to music. And she always said I was the most special boy in the universe. A mother who does all that for her son doesn't stop loving him just because he yells once. Do you agree? Peter nodded, but doubt still lingered in his eyes. But if she really loved me, why did she never come visit me? It was the question Faith feared because she didn't have the answer herself. Something about Laura's departure didn't add up. A mother doesn't abandon her 4-year-old son without leaving a trace unless... "Pete, do you remember if your mom tried to contact you after she left?" "What do you mean?" "Phone calls, letters, messages?" Peter thought carefully. "In the first few months, whenever the phone rang, I kept hoping it was her. But Dad always said it was work, and when I asked if she had called, he'd get really angry and tell me to stop holding on to false hope." A suspicion began forming in Faith's mind. Later, when Peter was napping, she decided to talk to Mrs. Jenkins. "Can I ask you something about when Pete's mother left?" Mrs. Jenkins glanced around nervously. "What do you want to know?" "Did she ever try to reach out? Never sent a letter? Never called?" The housekeeper looked visibly uncomfortable. "Why are you asking this?" "Because it's not normal for a mother to just disappear like that, especially one who was as loving as you've described." "Faith, I can't talk about this." "Mrs. Jenkins, you've taken care of Pete for years. You've seen how much he's suffering. If there's anything you know that could help him heal, please." The housekeeper glanced around once more and lowered her voice. "There were some letters in the first few months after she left." Faith's heart raced. "What happened to those letters?" "The boss, he said it was better for Pete not to have contact, that it would only make his recovery harder by giving him false hope." "He intercepted his mother's letters?" "I didn't say that." But Mrs. Jenkins' silence spoke volumes. Faith felt a surge of indignation. Richard hadn't just prevented his son from having contact with his mother. He had lied about her never trying to reach out. "Do these letters still exist?" "Faith, you're treading dangerous ground. The boss could fire you if he finds out you're asking these questions." "But Peter deserves to know the truth. A child can't heal while living a lie." Mrs. Jenkins took a deep breath. "There's a locked drawer in the boss's office. I've seen him put things in there, but I've never looked inside." "Do you have the key?" "Faith, no, that's an invasion of privacy. If he finds out, and if he doesn't, Peter has the right to know his mother didn't completely abandon him." The housekeeper wrestled with herself for a few minutes. "The boss is traveling to Washington, D.C. on Thursday. He'll be gone for 2 days. If anything happens, I know nothing." That was all Faith needed to hear. On Thursday morning, after Richard left for the airport, Faith and Mrs. Jenkins went down to the office. It was an imposing space, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a mahogany desk worth more than an economy car. "It's that drawer there," Mrs. Jenkins pointed to one on the side of the desk. Faith tried to open it, but it was locked. She glanced around and spotted a pencil holder with various items, including small keys. "It has to be one of these." On the third try, the drawer opened. Inside were documents, some old photos, and a stack of letters held together by a rubber band. Faith picked them up with trembling hands. The sender was always the same, Laura Thompson, and everyone was addressed to Peter. "Mrs. Jenkins, there are at least 10 letters here." "Good heavens!" Faith opened the first one, dated just 2 weeks after Laura left. "My dearest Peter, Mommy misses you so much it feels like my heart might burst. I know you must be confused, maybe even angry at Mommy for leaving. But I need you to understand Mommy didn't leave because she doesn't love you. Mommy left because she was very sick inside and needed to get better so she could be a better mother to you. Faith stopped reading, tears in her eyes. Mrs. Jenkins, she never abandoned Peter. She was sick and left to get treatment. What kind of sickness? Faith kept reading. The doctors said Mommy has a deep sadness in her heart, one that leaves her too weak to get out of bed some days. But I'm taking medicine and getting treatment so I can heal, and when I'm better, I'll come back for you, my love. Depression, Faith murmured. She had severe depression, and Richard never let her explain it to her son. They skimmed the other letters quickly. Each one held messages of love, explanations tailored for Peter's age about why she had to leave, promises she'd return as soon as she was well. The last letter was from 6 months ago. Peter, my love, Mommy is much better now. I found work in a small town, have a little house where you can have your own room. I've written your father asking to see you, but he never replies. I'll keep trying, because I'll never give up on you. Every day I look at the sky and send kisses to you on the wind. Faith, what will you do with this? I'll tell Peter. He has the right to know. And if the boss finds out, I'll face the consequences, but I can't let a child keep suffering for no reason when the truth is right here. Faith photographed every letter with her phone and put everything back exactly as it was. She went up to Peter's room, her heart pounding. Pete, I need to tell you something very important. Peter was in his chair, but this time he managed to turn his whole body toward her. The exercises were working. What is it? I found out why your mother never came to see you. Peter's face completely changed. Why? Because she did come, many times. She wrote you lots of letters, but your father never let you receive them. Peter fell silent for a long moment, processing the information. She wrote me letters. So many letters. And in every one she explains how much she loves you, that she didn't leave because she was angry with you, and that she wants to see you again so badly. Tears began to roll down Peter's face, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. She didn't abandon me. She never abandoned you. She was sick, an illness that makes people very sad inside, and she needed to leave to take care of herself, but she never stopped loving you. Peter tried to get up from the chair, momentarily forgetting he couldn't walk, but something extraordinary happened. His legs responded to the emotional impulse. He managed to stand for a few seconds before falling back into the chair. I did it. Faith, I stood up. Yes, you did. Because now you know you don't have to punish yourself anymore. It wasn't your fault, never was. Can I see the letters? Faith showed him the photos on her phone. Peter read each word with difficulty but with total concentration. With every sentence, his face grew brighter. She wants to see me again. She really does. And I think you want to see her too, don't you? Peter nodded vigorously. More than anything in the world. Then let's work on getting you to walk to her. For the rest of the afternoon, Peter made spectacular progress. He managed to move both legs intentionally, bend his knees, and even stand leaning on the chair for almost a minute. The revelation had released an emotional energy that had been repressed for 3 years. Peter's body was literally remembering how to walk because his mind had finally allowed it. But Faith knew the biggest challenge was still ahead, the confrontation with Richard. On Friday, when Richard returned from his trip, he found Peter noticeably different. The boy was more animated, more responsive, even smiling when his father entered the room. How has he been? He asked Mrs. Jenkins. Better than ever, sir. Happier, more talkative? Richard watched Peter with suspicion. Peter, how are you feeling? Good, Dad, really good. It was the first time in years Peter had answered his father with enthusiasm. Richard should have been happy, but something in his expression suggested caution, almost suspicion. And you, Faith, noticed any changes? Only that he seems more willing to talk, sir. Talk about what? Faith hesitated. It was the moment of truth. About his feelings, sir. About how much he misses his mother. The change in Richard's expression was immediate and frightening. I've already said that topic is not to be discussed in this house. With all due respect, sir, but perhaps that topic is exactly what needs to be discussed. How dare you question my decisions about my own son? Because I'm a trained psychologist, and I recognize emotional trauma when I see it. The silence that followed was tense. Richard looked at Faith as if seeing her for the first time. A psychologist? You lied on your resume. I didn't lie. I said I was a cleaner because that's what I'm doing to pay the bills, but my training lets me recognize that Peter doesn't have physical paralysis. He has emotional paralysis. That's ridiculous. Peter has been examined by the best neurologists in the country, and they all said the same thing. Physically, there's nothing wrong. The problem is emotional. Richard was visibly furious. You're fired. Get out of my house immediately. Dad, no! Peter shouted, managing to move in his chair in a way he hadn't for years. Please don't send Faith away. Peter, go back to your normal position now. I won't, Peter yelled louder. Faith is my friend. She helps me. Helps you how? By filling your head with false hope? She helps me understand it wasn't my fault Mom left. Richard froze. Who said it was your fault? I knew it was, because I yelled that day. But Faith explained that adults separate because of adult problems, not because of kids. Faith shouldn't have talked to you about that. Why not? It's about my life. Peter tried to stand up from the chair, fueled by anger. And he did. He stood, trembling but upright, looking straight at his father. Richard stepped back, shocked. Peter, you're standing. I am, and I'll walk again, because now I know I can. How is this possible? Faith took a deep breath. It was now or never. Because he stopped blaming himself for something that was never his responsibility. Peter believed he deserved to be in a wheelchair as punishment for causing his parents' separation. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It's psychosomatic. His body was obeying what his mind believed he deserved. Peter managed 2 shaky steps before needing to lean on the wall. He was panting, but his eyes shone with triumph. Dad, I walked. I really did. Richard looked from his son to Faith, completely lost. I don't understand if it was psychological. Why couldn't the psychologists I brought help? Because you didn't let them uncover the truth about his mother. What truth? The truth about the letters. Richard's face instantly paled. What letters? The letters Laura sent to Peter, the ones you hid in your office drawer. You went through my office. Peter had the right to know his mother never abandoned him. You had no right to... Dad, Peter shouted with a force that stunned everyone. Mom wrote me letters. Richard looked at his son, then at Faith, torn between anger and despair. Peter, it's complicated. It's not complicated, it's simple. You hid my mom's letters and let me believe she didn't care about me. I was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? From knowing she loves me. Peter took a few more shaky steps, this time toward his father. I spent 3 years thinking I was a bad kid. 3 years unable to walk because I thought I deserved it. Richard began to cry. It was the first time Faith had seen him show any emotion besides anger or control. I didn't know you blamed yourself. How didn't you know? I told you 1,000,000 times it was my fault. I thought it was just a child's words. They were the words of a child who was suffering. Peter reached his father and, leaning on the wall, looked straight into his eyes. Dad, I want to see Mom's letters, and I want to talk to her. Richard looked at Faith again, this time without anger. There was despair, confusion, but also something that might have been gratitude. Faith, do you really think you can help him walk again? I already am. He took several steps today, but for a full recovery he needs to resolve all his emotional issues, including his relationship with his mother. What if Laura doesn't want anything to do with him? It's been 3 years, Dad, Peter said with impressive maturity for his 7 years. I read the letters. She does want to know about me. The question is, will you let her? Richard sank heavily onto Peter's bed, covering his face with his hands. I was trying to protect both of you. From what? Faith asked softly. Laura was very sick when she left. Severe depression, panic attacks. She was on multiple medications. I thought it would be better for Peter not to see her in that state. But was that your decision to make? Richard raised his head. I just wanted Peter to have a normal life. No trauma, no complications. Dad. Peter stepped closer, managing to balance on his own. Life without Mum isn't a normal life. It's half a life. Peter's simple words echoed through the room. Richard looked at his son, truly seeing him for the first time in years, not as a patient, not as a problem to be solved, but as a child who had been deprived of his mother and had found a desperate way to cope with that pain. Peter, can you forgive me? Only if you promise I can see Mom. Richard took a deep breath. I promise. Faith felt tears of relief streaming down her face, but she knew there was still a long road ahead. Mr. Thompson, may I make a suggestion? Go ahead. I think it would be good for Peter to talk to Laura on the phone first, so they can get used to each other again before meeting in person. Do you have her number? It's in one of the more recent letters. Richard nodded slowly. And then? Then we'll see how they feel. But Peter has the right to have a relationship with his mother, even if you two can't have one with each other. I know. I realize that now. Peter, who had managed to sit on the edge of the bed, looked at Faith. Will you keep helping me? If your father allows it. Richard looked at Faith for a long moment. You've done in 2 weeks what the best specialists couldn't do in 3 years. I'd be a fool not to let you continue. But I need to be honest about one thing, Faith said. I can't keep working as a cleaner. Peter needs professional psychological care, and I need to dedicate proper time to that. Will you accept being Peter's official psychologist? I will, but with conditions. Name them. You'll also go to therapy, because a child doesn't develop psychosomatic paralysis just from their parents' separation. It takes an emotionally toxic environment to reach that point. Richard swallowed hard, but nodded. All right. What else? Peter will have regular contact with his mother, supervised at first if needed, but regular. Agreed. And lastly, you'll stop treating Peter like a terminal patient and start treating him like a normal child who needs love, boundaries, and encouragement. Faith, Peter called to her. Yes? Thank you for teaching me I can walk. I didn't teach you to walk, Pete. I taught you that you always knew how. You just needed to forgive yourself to remember. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following days, Peter's transformation was remarkable. With the guilt lifted from his small shoulders, his body responded quickly to the emotional therapy Faith had begun. Each day he could walk farther, with more balance and confidence. But the most important moment was yet to come. The first phone call with Laura. Are you nervous? Faith asked as Peter prepared himself. A little. What if she's mad at me? Why would she be mad? For believing she didn't love me. Peter, you were a 4-year-old who didn't understand what was happening. Your mother will understand that. Richard entered the room carrying the cordless phone. His hands trembled slightly. I've already called her, explained the situation. She cried a lot when she heard about your legs. Is she mad? At me, yes. At you? Never. Richard dialed the number and handed the phone to Peter. The boy held it with both hands, as if it were something sacred. Hello? Peter? My love, is that really you? Laura's voice was exactly as Peter remembered, but there was an emotion in it that made him start crying immediately. Mom? Yes, my love. It's Mom. Oh my, how you've grown. Your voice is deeper. Mom, I missed you so much. Me too, sweetheart. Every day. Mom never stopped thinking about you, not for a second. Peter looked at Faith, who nodded encouragingly. Mom, I can walk again. You can? That's wonderful. Tell Mom how it happened. Faith taught me that it wasn't my fault you left, and when I stopped blaming myself, my legs started working again. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then Peter heard his mother crying. Oh my God, Peter, you thought it was your fault? I thought you left because I yelled that day. Oh, my love, it was never ever your fault. Mom left because she was very sick inside, not because she was angry with you. I know that now. Faith explained to me about depression. And how are you feeling now? Better. Much better. Mom, when can I see you? Whenever you want, my love. Mom is living in a small town, but I can come visit you when you're ready. Peter looked at his father, who was leaning against the wall watching the conversation with a complex expression. Dad, can I see Mom? Of course you can. Mom, Dad said it's okay. Can you come this weekend? Yes, I can. I can't wait to give you a big hug. Me too. And Mom, can you sing that song for me over the phone? Which song, my love? The one about the little bird. Faith sang it, and I remembered you singing it to me. Laura began to sing softly over the phone. Flying, flying through the blue sky, the little bird searching, searching for its home, for its nest. Peter closed his eyes and smiled. It was as if 3 years of pain were being healed in that moment. When the call ended, Peter was radiant. Faith, she's coming to see me. I'm so happy for you. And Dad, thank you for letting her. Richard approached and for the first time in years hugged his son. A real warm hug, not the careful embrace of someone afraid of breaking something. Peter, forgive me for taking so long to understand. I already forgive you, Dad. You were hurting too. The wisdom of that 7-year-old child amazed Faith. Peter had learned a lesson about forgiveness that many adults take decades to understand. In the days leading up to Laura's visit, Peter made incredible progress. He could walk around the whole room, go up and down stairs with support, even run short distances. His body was literally remembering everything it had forgotten. But Faith knew the real test would be the reunion with his mother. There was a chance that the emotion of the moment could cause a temporary setback, so she prepared Peter for all possibilities. Pete, when you see your mum, you might get so emotional that your legs shake or feel weak. That's normal. What if I can't walk to her? Then you go to her however you can. What matters is the reunion, not how you get to her. But I want to show her I'm better. She already knows you're better. You talked to her, laughed, sang. That already shows you're healed inside. Saturday morning arrived with a cloudless blue sky. Peter had been awake since 6, anxious and excited. He had chosen his favorite outfit, a light blue t-shirt and jeans, and insisted on combing his hair himself. What time is she coming? He asked for the 10th time. At 10 o'clock, Richard replied, also visibly nervous. What if she thinks I've changed too much? Peter, Faith sat beside him. Your mother is going to be so proud to see how much you've grown and matured. Do you think she'll want to live here again? Richard and Faith exchanged glances. It was a delicate question. Peter, Richard said softly, your mother and I won't be getting back together, but that doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with her. I know. Faith explained to me that parents can separate but still be parents forever. At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Peter, who was in the living room, managed to get up from the couch by himself and walk to the window to look. A woman with brown hair, wearing a simple navy blue dress, stood at the entrance. Even after 3 years, Peter recognized her immediately. It's her, it's Mom. Peter started walking toward the front door, but his legs trembled with emotion. Faith followed closely, ready to help if needed. Richard opened the door. Laura was thinner than before, with a few lines on her face that hadn't been there 3 years ago, but her eyes were the same, big, dark, and full of love. Hi, Richard. Hi, Laura. Please, come in. Laura stepped inside, looking around with nostalgia, but her eyes searched for only one person. Peter, she called softly. Mom! Peter appeared in the hallway, walking on his own, but slowly. When Laura saw him walking, she covered her mouth with her hands and began to cry. Oh my God, you're walking. You're really walking. Peter tried to run to her, but his legs were shaking too much, so he stopped and held out his arms. Mom, come here, please. Laura didn't hesitate. She ran to her son and scooped him up, spinning him around the room. Both were crying and laughing at the same time. My love, how you've grown. How handsome you are. Mom, I walked to you. You did. I'm so proud of you." Faith watched the scene with tears in her eyes. It was the kind of moment that reminded her why she'd chosen psychology as her profession. Seeing a family reunite, seeing a child heal, it was priceless. "Mom, do you want to see my room? It's just the way you left it." "Of course I do." Peter took Laura's hand and led her up the stairs. His steps were steady now. His mother's presence had given him extra strength. In the room, Laura looked around with emotion. "It really is the same. Even your toys are in the same place. Dad wouldn't let anyone touch anything. He said when you came back, everything would be just the way you liked it." Laura glanced at Richard, who had followed them upstairs. There was gratitude in her eyes, despite everything that had happened. "Mom, can I introduce you to my friend Faith? She's the one who helped me walk again." Laura walked up to Faith and hugged her tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me back my son. I just helped him find himself again." "Richard told me you're a psychologist. How did you figure out what no one else could?" "I listened to what Peter was trying to say, and most of all, I listened to what he couldn't say." Peter tugged his mother's hand. "Mom, sit here on my bed. I want to tell you everything that happened." For the next hour, Peter recounted his healing journey to Laura. He spoke about the guilt he'd carried, how he'd interpreted his parents' separation, and how meeting Faith had changed his perspective. "Mom, now I know that when adults have problems with each other, it's not the kids' fault. And I know you didn't leave because you didn't love me." "Never, never was that the case, my love. Mom has always loved you more than anything in the world. And I know you were sick, and you needed to take care of yourself to get better." "That's right. And you know what else? Mom is much better now. I take some medication that helps me not feel so sad, and I have a therapist who talks to me just like you have, Faith. And you won't get sick again? I might have bad days now and then like everyone does, but now I know how to take care of myself, and I also know I'll never be away from you for so long again." "What do you mean?" Laura looked at Richard. "We talked on the phone last night. We reached an agreement about how we'll handle things." "What kind of agreement?" Richard moved closer to the bed. "Your mom is moving back to Los Angeles. She won't live here with us, but she'll be close by so she can see you whenever she wants." "Really?" "Really," Laura confirmed. "I found an apartment 10 minutes from here, and I also got a job as a teacher at a nearby school." Jack looked from one parent to the other, processing the information. "What about weekends?" "On weekends, you can choose where you want to stay. Here with Dad, with me, or a day at each place. Whatever you prefer. And you won't fight anymore." Richard and Laura exchanged glances. "Jack," Richard said, "your mom and I learned that even if we're not husband and wife anymore, we'll always be your parents, and parents need to work together to take care of their kids." "What if you disagree about something? Then we'll talk like adults, no yelling, no fighting, and most importantly, without dragging you into grown-up arguments." Jack smiled, a bigger smile than Faith had seen since she met him. "Faith, did you hear? I'll get to see Mom all the time, I heard. I'm so happy for you. And you know what else? Now I don't have to be afraid to stand or walk anymore because I'm not being punished." Laura looked confused. "Punished for what?" "I thought God took the movement from my legs to punish me for making you leave, but now I know that's not what happened." "Oh, my sweetheart," Laura hugged him tight. "You've been through so much alone." "Not alone. I had Dad and Mrs. Jenkins, and now I have you and Faith." "That's true. And you know what? You'll never have to go through something hard alone again. There'll always be grown-ups around to help you." Jack nodded, then had an idea. "Mom, do you want to see me walk in the garden? I can walk all the way to the big tree." "Of course I do." They all went down to the garden. Jack walked steadily across the grass, reached the big tree, and even managed to climb onto the first branch. "Look, Mom, I made it up." "Oh my goodness, Jack, you're so strong." Richard watched the scene with a mix of joy and sadness. It was clear how much he'd missed in those 3 years, how his obsession with medical cures had kept him from what his son really needed. "Faith," he said softly. "Yes?" "Thank you. Thank you for showing me I was being a terrible father." "You weren't terrible. You were desperate and scared, but now it can be different. Really, really, Jack has forgiven you. Laura is willing to keep things civil. You have all the tools to be the father he needs. What if I mess up again? You will. All parents do. The difference is owning up to it and trying to do better next time. Jack ran back to where the adults were. Faith, will you keep being my therapist? Of course, we still have some things to work on. Like what? Like how to handle your feelings when things get tough. How to express anger or sadness without hurting yourself. How to build a new routine with your parents apart but still present. Are those things important? Very important. But now you already know the most important thing of all. What? That you're loved. By both your parents, each in their own way. And nothing you do or don't do will ever change that. Jack smiled and hugged Faith. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for letting me help. Laura approached the group. Faith, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why were you working as a cleaner when you're a licensed psychologist? Faith hesitated, but decided to be honest. My son Jack had an expensive surgery last year. I lost my job at the public hospital and needed to pay off his treatment debts. Working as a cleaner was what was available. And now Richard hired me as Peter's psychologist. I'll be able to work in my field again. That's wonderful. And your son, how is he doing? Much better, thank you. The surgery was a success. Peter, who had been listening, tugged at Faith's sleeve. Faith, can I meet Jack? Of course. I think you two will get along. Did he need a wheelchair too? No, it was a different issue, but he also had to learn to trust his body again after surgery. So he understands me. He definitely does. Richard joined the group. Faith, I have a proposal for you. What is it? Besides being Peter's psychologist, would you like to oversee a program I'm thinking of creating? What kind of program? A support center for families in crisis, to help other kids like Peter and other parents like me. Faith looked surprised. Are you serious? Completely? I've seen what you've done for our family. I can imagine how many others could benefit from the same kind of help. That would be amazing. So, is that a yes? It's a definite yes. Peter clapped his hands. Faith, now you can help other boys and girls like me. Exactly. And can I help too? How so? I can tell other kids what it's like to be in a wheelchair when you don't need one, and how good it feels to walk again. Laura smiled. My son wanting to help others. I'm so proud. Mom, I learned from Faith that when someone helps you, it's good to help others too. What a beautiful lesson. As the day went on, the family dynamics adjusted naturally. Peter divided his attention between his parents, showed off his physical progress, and shared stories from the past 3 years. It was like he was making up for lost time. By late afternoon, Laura had to leave to organize her move to Los Angeles. Peter, next week I'll be living nearby. You'll be able to see me whenever you want. Promise? I promise. And do you promise that if you get sad again, you'll tell me instead of leaving? Laura hugged her son tightly. I promise I'll never leave without explaining again. And if I get sad, I'll ask for help to feel better. Okay, I also promise that if I get angry or sad, I'll talk about it instead of keeping it inside. Deal. Peter walked to the door to say goodbye to his mother. His steps were steady, confident. He was a completely different child from the one Faith had met just weeks before. Bye, Mom. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, more than all the stars in the sky. After Laura left, Peter, Richard, and Faith sat in the living room. How are you feeling, Pete? Faith asked. Happy, really happy, but also a little tired. That's normal. It's been a day full of emotions. Faith, can I ask you something? Of course. Now that I'm walking again and will see Mom all the time, do I still need a psychologist? Faith smiled. What do you think? Peter thought carefully. I think so, because there are still things I don't fully understand about feelings, and I like talking to you. Then we'll keep talking. Not every day like now, but regularly. And will Dad have a psychologist too? I will, Richard confirmed. I need to learn to be a better father. You're not a bad dad. You were just scared. Thank you for forgiving me, Peter. Faith taught me that forgiving is good for the one who forgives too, so I forgave to feel better myself. Richard looked at Faith. Where did this child learn so much wisdom? He always had this wisdom. He just needed a safe space to express it. That night at bedtime, Peter asked Faith to come to his room. I want to give you something. What? Peter opened the drawer of his nightstand and took out a drawing. I made this for you. It was a colorful crayon drawing. It showed a woman with black hair next to a blonde boy. The two were holding hands and smiling. At the top of the page, in large, uneven letters, it read, "Thank you, Faith." Peter, it's beautiful. I'll keep it forever. Really? Really, it's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Faith, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I'll be able to run again, like really run? I think so. Your body is remembering everything very quickly. And do you think I'll be able to play soccer? Why do you want to play soccer? Because I want to do normal things boys my age do. I want to play, run, climb trees. I think you'll be able to do all that and much more. That's good. I really want to take Jack to play ball with me when I meet him. I'm sure he'll love that. Peter snuggled into his pillow. Faith, yes? Thank you for not giving up on me. I would never give up on you, Pete. You're a very special child. Why? Because you went through something very hard and still kept your heart open to love and forgive. I learned that from you. No, sweetheart, you already knew it. I just helped you remember. Peter smiled and closed his eyes. Good night, Faith. Good night, Pete. Sleep well. Faith went downstairs and found Richard in the living room looking out the window. How is he? Happy. Tired, but happy. Faith, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why did you care so much about Peter? You barely knew him. Faith thought about the question. You know, when my son Jack was in the hospital, I felt so helpless. I couldn't do anything to take away his pain. I couldn't speed up his healing. I think taking care of Peter was a way to channel all that energy of wanting to help. And now I feel like I've found my purpose again. I remembered why I became a psychologist. To help children, to help families find their way back to each other, to show that there's always hope even when everything seems lost. Richard nodded. Peter was lucky to find you. I was the lucky one to find him, and you too. How so? You learned that being a father isn't about controlling or protecting from everything. It's about loving, guiding, and being present. I'll still make plenty of mistakes. Of course you will, but now you know that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. It's just an opportunity to learn and do better. Faith? Yes? Thank you for saving my family. I didn't save your family, Richard. You saved yourselves. I just showed you where the door was. 2 weeks later, Laura had already moved to Los Angeles and established a routine of visits with Peter. The boy was attending physical therapy to strengthen his legs, which had gone unused for 3 years, but his progress was extraordinary. Faith kept regular sessions with Peter and had also started seeing Richard. The family support center was being planned, and she was excited about the possibility of helping other children and parents in similar situations. Jack, Faith's son, met Peter, and the two became fast friends. Jack taught Peter about video games and soccer, while Peter taught Jack about patience and forgiveness. One afternoon during a session, Peter asked a question that took Faith by surprise. Faith, do you think I'll be able to help other kids who have problems like I did? What do you mean, like kids who can't walk because of emotional reasons, or who blame themselves for things that aren't their fault? Would you like to do that? Very much. I think if a child saw me walking and knew I used to be in a wheelchair, they'd believe they could get better too. You know that's an excellent idea. Really? Really. When you're older, if you still want to, you could study psychology like me, or become a therapist who specializes in helping children. I really could. You really could. Your experience would be very valuable to other kids. Peter smiled, excited by the possibility. Faith, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I feel sad when I remember the 3 years I spent in a wheelchair. It's like I lost part of my childhood. It's normal to feel that way. It really was a loss. But you know what I think when I feel sad like that? What? That maybe I needed to go through that so I could help other kids later, like it was preparation for something bigger. Faith felt tears forming in her eyes. The emotional maturity of this 7-year-old was astonishing. Peter, you know you have a very special wisdom, don't you? Faith taught me. And I also learned on my own during those quiet years. I learned to observe, to understand people's feelings. And what do you want to do with that wisdom? I want to use it to help, like you did for me. At that moment, Faith knew Peter wasn't just a child who had been healed. He was a child transformed by the experience into someone with a greater purpose. Months passed. Peter was running, playing soccer, attending school normally. The family had found a new balance, with Peter splitting his time between his parents naturally and harmoniously. The family support center was almost ready to open. Faith had hired a team of psychologists, therapists, and social workers. Richard had invested not just money but also his personal time and energy into the project. One Saturday morning, Peter showed up at the house where the center was being finished. Faith, can I see how it's coming along? Of course. Want a guided tour? Peter walked through the halls, observing the colorful rooms, the therapeutic toys, the spaces designed to welcome families in crisis. This will be good for kids to feel safe, he commented, looking at a playroom. Exactly, like how you felt safe in your room when we talked. Faith, can I make a suggestion? Always. I think there should be a space where kids can be alone when they feel really sad or angry. A place just for them, where no one will bother them. Why? Because sometimes we need to feel the bad things before we can talk about them. Faith wrote down the suggestion. Peter kept surprising her with his deep understanding of children's emotional needs. Any other suggestions? I think moms and dads need a place to cry too, because they get sad too, but they don't want their kids to see. Very smart. We'll do that. And Faith, when the center opens, can I come here sometimes to talk to other kids? If your parents agree, that would be wonderful. I'll ask them. That evening during family dinner at Richard's house, Peter brought it up. Dad, Mom, can I talk to you about something? Of course, they both answered. I want to help other kids at Faith Center. Tell them my story. Richard and Laura exchanged glances. Peter, Laura said gently, are you sure you want to talk about that hard time with strangers? It won't be hard, Mom, because now I know it had a happy ending. And if my story helps a child believe they can have a happy ending too, it's worth it. But you're still very young for that kind of responsibility, Richard pondered. Dad, I spent 3 years in a wheelchair. I think that made me grow up faster, and besides, it wouldn't be a heavy responsibility. It would just be talking, like I talk with Jack. What if some child asks hard questions? Laura questioned. Then I'll answer what I know, and what I don't, I'll ask Faith for help. Peter argued with simple but convincing logic. It was clear he had thought seriously about it. Let me talk to Faith about how this would work in practice, Richard suggested. If she thinks it's appropriate, we can try it. Thank you, Dad. But with conditions, Laura added. Nothing can interfere with your school, your friends, or your normal childhood. Of course, Mom, I want to be a normal kid too. I just want to help a little in my free time. Later, when Peter was asleep, Richard and Laura talked about their son's request. What do you think? Richard asked. I think he really wants to do this, and maybe it'll help him fully process what he's been through. But he's so young. Richard, our son has gone through things most kids never experience. That matured him in a unique way. Maybe we should trust his wisdom. What if reliving the experience is traumatic? He's not reliving it. He's sharing how he overcame it. That's very different. Richard nodded. You're right. And Faith will always be there to guide him. Exactly. And if we notice it's not good for him, we can stop any time. The next day, Richard spoke with Faith about Peter's proposal. What do you think professionally? I think it could be very therapeutic for him. Turning a traumatic experience into a way to help others is one of the healthiest ways to process trauma. But he's so young. young in age but mature in experience, and he'd always be supervised. He'd never be alone with other kids without a professional present. How would it work? He could join some group sessions where children with psychosomatic symptoms meet. His presence and his story could be very encouraging. What if a child asks a question he can't answer? Part of the process would be teaching him to say, "I don't know," and redirect to the responsible adult. That would also be educational for him. Richard thought for a moment. And do you think he really wants to do this, or is he just trying to please us adults? Yesterday he told me he dreamed he was in a room full of kids in wheelchairs, teaching them how to walk. He woke up happy, not from a nightmare. I think this is genuinely something he wants to do. Then let's try it. A week later, the center was officially opened. Peter cut the ribbon alongside Richard and Faith, using scissors adapted for his small hands. "Now other families can be as happy as ours became," he told the reporters present. In its first few months, the center helped dozens of families. Peter attended one group session a week, always accompanied by Faith or another psychologist. During one session, a 6-year-old girl who had stopped speaking after her parents' divorce listened carefully to Peter's story. "You really couldn't walk?" she asked softly. "Really couldn't. My legs were numb for 3 years. And now you can run?" "I can. Want to see?" Peter ran back and forth across the room. The girl smiled for the first time since arriving at the center. "And you don't get sad anymore?" "Sometimes I do. Everyone gets sad now and then. But now I know how to deal with sadness without hurting myself." "How?" "I talk to the adults who take care of me. And I remember that bad things don't last forever." The girl nodded thoughtfully. "My parents also got divorced. And do you think it was your fault?" "A little bit. Can I tell you a secret? I used to think it was my fault too. But Faith taught me that when parents separate, it's always because of grown-up problems, never because of the kids." "Really? Really?" Faith watched the interaction with admiration. Peter had a natural gift for connecting with other children who were hurting. By the end of the session, the girl had spoken more than in the last 4 weeks of therapy. And Peter was beaming, feeling like he had truly helped someone. Months passed. Peter was growing up, developing normally, keeping good grades in school, and maintaining healthy friendships. His involvement at the center remained positive, both for him and the other children. One afternoon, nearly a year after it all began, Faith was organizing her office when Peter appeared with a drawing. "I made this for you." It was a more elaborate drawing than the first. It showed several children holding hands in a circle with a rainbow in the sky. In the center of the circle it read, "Thank you for teaching me that everyone deserves to be happy." "Peter, it's beautiful." "Faith, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you remember the first day you came to clean my room?" "I do." "I was really scared. I thought you'd be like the other adults, looking at me with pity or like I was broken. And what changed your mind? You sang that song, and I realized you weren't trying to fix me. You were trying to understand me. And what was the difference? Everyone wanted me to walk again. You were the first person who wanted me to smile again." Faith felt tears forming in her eyes. "Peter, do you know you've taught me as much as I've taught you?" "How so?" "You taught me that real healing doesn't happen when the body gets better. It happens when the heart heals." "And was my heart hurt?" "It was. But now it's healed." "Faith?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up on my heart." Faith hugged Peter, remembering the first day she had walked into his room and found a child lost in his own pain. Now, nearly a year later, she was hugging a strong, confident boy full of purpose. "Peter, I'm the one who should thank you for letting me be part of your story. You'll always be part of my story, Faith, forever." At that moment, looking at Peter, Faith knew she had done the right thing by taking that cleaning job. Sometimes, the paths that seemed the humblest led to the most important destinations. Peter had learned to walk again, but more importantly, he had learned to fly. And Faith, who had come to that mansion only wanting to clean rooms, had ended up helping to heal hearts. Peter's story spread through the medical and psychological community. Faith was invited to give talks about psychosomatic symptoms in children, always using Peter as a living example that healing is possible. The Family Support Center became a model in the city, helping hundreds of families every year. Peter kept participating in the activities, always supervised, always protected, but always contributing with his unique experience. Richard and Laura developed a healthy co-parenting relationship, attending Peter's school meetings together, celebrating his achievements as a team, and supporting each other through the challenges of raising their son. Peter grew up knowing that parents could separate without ceasing to be a family. He learned that love isn't measured by physical closeness, but by the constancy of care and emotional presence. At 10 years old, Peter wrote a school essay about professions. The title was, "When I Grow Up, I Want to Help Broken Hearts." Faith kept a copy of that essay on her desk, next to the first drawing Peter had ever made for her. They were daily reminders of why she had chosen her profession and how a child had changed her life just as much as she had changed his. In the essay, Peter wrote, "When I was 7, I thought I was broken inside. I couldn't walk, and I thought it was my fault my parents got divorced. But a very special person taught me that we don't break. We just sometimes forget how to work right. And when we remember, we become even stronger than before. I want to be a psychologist to help other kids remember how to be happy." In that moment, Faith knew her mission was complete. She hadn't just helped Peter walk again. She had helped shape a future therapist who would carry his healing experience to many other children. And so the story that began with a desperate cleaning lady and a boy in a wheelchair ended with two people who had found their true purpose, helping others discover that there's always hope, always healing, and always a second chance at happiness. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story of overcoming and healing. Peter managed to overcome his trauma and walk again through love and understanding. What moved you most in this journey of a family reunited? Leave your comments below, sharing where you're watching from and your thoughts on this transformation. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.